Okay, this is the last portion of the DevSecOps Foundation course. We're going to do a sample exam paper, they call it. It's a simulation essentially of the certification exam process, but you're kind of doing it manually rather than with the online tool. The sample exam is composed of material from the DevOps Institute, which is certified and accredited by PeopleCert, and is brought to you by One World Training. So lots of folks involved in this. And this is intended to help you prepare for taking the certification exam. If you can do well on this exam, you're probably going to do fine and pass the actual cert. Just again, a word about One World Training. One World Training is a global training organization offering business simulations training across the world in many countries, supporting IT, business management, project management, standards work, regulatory GDPR courses, and over 150 other trainings for both individuals and organizations. And One World Training delivers courses in public classroom formats, online, e-learning, or a blended approach of self-paced and e-learning, with the in-person support for instructions or at the user's location, with on-teams training for private and government organizations. It's an authorized training center and endorsed by a lot of leading professional bodies. So these are just some of the logos from various organizations that One World Training is associated with. The ITIL services, Prince2. I'm not going to read all of these. The DevOps Institute, of course, which is the creator of this course. SDI, and so on. Again, I'm not going to read them all, but it's a pretty good list of courses. So you're welcome to, and recommended to check out other offerings as part of your ongoing learning goals. Okay. So in this sample exam, the rules are pretty much the same as the actual certification. There will be 40 questions. Each of them is a multiple choice A, B, C, or D. You get 1 mark for each correct answer. You need to answer at least 26 questions correctly to pass the exam. So it's a 65% pass rate. You get 60 minutes to complete the exam. Usually you can do a first pass of all the questions about a half an hour or so, and then you can go back and check the ones that you're not sure about. You can double check with the actual course materials, because you're allowed to have that open, usually on a different laptop. It is a proctored exam, so somebody's going to be watching to make sure there's not somebody else in the room or something like that. But you are allowed to have a copy of the materials, usually on another laptop, so you can do a quick search if you're trying to look something up. Okay, so we'll just go through all of the 40 questions, and I'll explain the answers as we go along. So which best represents the goal of DevSecOps? So meeting governance, risk, and compliance requirements. That is a goal, all right. Safely distribute security decisions at speed and scale. That's a better answer, because it's more about, injecting security across the value stream. So I like B better than A. Automating security policies and audit requirements. Yeah, that's a goal, but it's probably not as strong as B. Embedding security practices into software development. So it's not only about software development. So all of these have some element of correctness, but I think B is the best answer. Let's see. Yes. Okay. According to Lalou's advice process, what must be done by any person before making a decision? So you may recall he recommends seeking advice from an expert, which is A. Seeking advice from people who will be impacted as well. That's B. Consider the cost. That has nothing to do with it. So both A and B, which is answer D, is the correct answer. Okay, which is needed to build meaningful metrics? Data, well, to operate, yeah. A repeatable approach, yes. You want the metrics to be, repeatable. And the context, yeah, they won't make sense if you don't know the context. So I think the best answer here is D, all of the above. Yeah. Okay, which type of tool can be used to limit access to production by automation? Which type of tool can be used to limit access to production by automation, orchestration, and configuration management tools? Password management? Well, passwords could help. Configuration management? Yeah. Privileged access management. That's a stronger answer because it covers the kind of a higher level of privilege management. And GRC doesn't really, it's not specific enough. So I think the best answer is C, privileged access. Yeah. Okay. If Bob Burker establishes a pipeline to deploy software in a fast and continuous manner, which of the following DevSecOps goals should he be trying to achieve? So he's talking about speed, trying to get things faster and continuous. So which of the goals? So baking security in rather than bolting it on is not really a goal. The third way is a principle, but not a goal. Quality in checks is not specifically a goal. Rapid time to market, that's a goal. Okay, so that's an example. You have to read these questions carefully and make sure you're picking answers that really do answer the question. Which represents the best practices to building KPIs which reflect a responsive DevSecOps pipeline? Okay, the best practices to building KPIs. Whitelisting only approved applications and reporting results. That's not really about KPIs per se. KPIs are driven by pipeline application with the ability to threshold gate at every stage. Yes, that makes sense for that question. So B is possible. Allowing teams to find their own solutions. It's not necessarily a bad idea, but B is a stronger answer. D, focus on meeting the audit team's information and reporting on requirements. Yeah, but that's again not as strong as B. So B is the best answer here. Yeah. Sample question 7. Which term represents the capability of an environment or organization to tolerate change and disturbances? So it's about tolerating changes and disturbances. Resilience, A, yes. Flexibility, not really about tolerating change, but it could help adapt. Agility, not really. Adaptability, no. Tolerating change is more along the lines of resilience, so A is the best answer. Okay. Which approach can be used to reduce tensions between an organization's security development and operations teams that are used by a comprehensive security program? Reducing tensions. Okay. Introduce patterns over time so people can get used to working in a certain way. That's a good answer. You don't want to introduce too many changes at once or it could actually increase tensions. So I like A. B, set strict gates between dev and ops. So the formal you do want clear responsibilities, but just setting clear gates isn't going to help with reducing friction. C, distribute all security tasks which cause conflict to non-security individuals. That doesn't even make sense. You wouldn't want to do that. Implement a governance, risk management, and compliance platform. No, A is the best answer here. Introduce patterns over time. Question 9. Jacqueline establishes a pipeline to expedite her software development and is determined to implement code-driven, peer-reviewed processes. Which of the following is she attempting to implement? Okay, shifting security left. The peer reviews in and of themselves don't shift security left. Data standards. No, that would be more like what she uses to do the reviews, but not that. Okay, data validation. It is a form of data validation. And reducing technical debt, nothing to do much with that. So I'm going to be a little bit guessing here. This is one I might, check later if I wasn't sure. I'm Let me reread the question. Jacqueline established a pipeline to expedite her software development. Is determined to implement code-driven, peer-reviewed processes. I'm going to guess data validation. No, it's data standards. Yeah, that was my second guess. So establishing data standards for the peer reviews, I guess, is what they're referring to. So that's one I probably would have got wrong. You might want to memorize that one if you were the same as me. Okay, sample exam question 10. What is governance, risk management, and compliance, GRC? Okay, it can be some tools, so A is possible. A team or practice certainly can be that. An executive level committee, not that. So I think A or B works. Yeah. Okay, question 11. Which statement about continuous security practice is most correct? It represents the addressing of security concerns and testing in the continuous delivery pipeline. So we're talking about continuous security practices. It's not a bad answer. Software development practice where team members integrate daily. That's more about continuous integration. That's not continuous security. Should be fully automated. As much as possible, that's true, but that's not really, as good as A. D allows for every change to be processed through a pipeline and put into production. That's more about deployment. So I think the best answer here is A. Yeah. In the context of DevSecOps, which is an example of the shift left principle, involves security during application design. Yeah, that's getting security up front. So I like A. Automate penetration testing. Not as strong. I mean, it's certainly doing penetration testing where you do it would make a difference in answering that question, but it doesn't say so. Introducing threat modeling. Early in the process, yes, but it doesn't say that. Introduce test-driven development. Possibly, but it's not specific to security in the way it's stated. I think A is the best answer for a DevSecOps course. Yeah. Which characteristic of resilient organizations makes it possible for them to overcome failure? The ability to recover quickly. Yeah, that's true. When failures occur, you want to recover quickly. The ability to prevent. Yep. So A and B, the ability to learn fast doesn't have a lot to do with it. So I think the answer is D, which is both A and C. Yes. Question 14. Planning for a DevSecOps pipeline requires managing the structure through carefully implementing tools for notification, health, and architectures. What type of asset categories are typically associated with architecture? Okay, so our assets, our virtual machines an asset, containers asset, platform as a service could be considered an asset as a tool. So A is a possible answer. Infrastructure is code, identity as a service, Apache. That's a little too specific with Apache. I don't like B as well. A is a better answer. Kafka, Kubernetes, and Docker, those are very specific tools. I think they're a little too specific for this general answer question. Role-based access controls, supply chain metrics, and Scrum. Scrum is not really an asset. So I think out of these four, A is the best answer. Yeah. Okay, question 15. Which describes the purpose of DAST, Dynamic Application Security Tools? Performs vulnerability and weakness analysis on source code. No, DAST is not about source code. It's about executable code, right? Performs vulnerability and weakness analysis on operating applications. Certainly it is that. B, checks for libraries or functions that have known vulnerabilities. No, it's more about testing operating systems. And D, looks at security weakness by gaining access to a system's data. No. So here the best answer is B. Okay, question 16. Which is a trigger for the incident response process? Log data, possibly, yes. Threat intelligence, that's usually not part of the incident response. You might want to arrange things according to threats, but incident response is, that's usually disconnected from threat intelligence per se. Attack response data. Attack, it's not, that's really attack response data. is a trigger for incident response process. I would say A, but I'm not 100% sure. Here's one I might go look it up afterwards, but I'm going to say, oh, they're saying A and B, threat intelligence is triggering incident response. So I guess the result of threat intelligence may prioritize things, but it's a little indirect. I would have preferred A, but remember they're looking for A and B in this case. As part of a DevOps experiment, a development team has set up a test environment using cloud services. The team wants to use best practices to secure the environment, which is again cloud, which is not an IAM best practice. Not store root access keys in a vault. That is a best practice, so that's not a good answer. Assign permissions directly to users. That's not a good idea, so that is a possible answer. Rotate secrets is actually a good idea, so that's not a good answer. Enable multi-factor applications for privileged users. That's a good idea. So the best answer for here is recognizing it's a negative question is B. Yeah, assigning permissions directly to users. Okay, the term safety culture most likely refers to which of the following statements? I feel free to tell my boss bad news. Certainly that makes sense. All OSHA standards are met and information sheets are posted. Good to have that information, but it doesn't have a lot to do with safety culture. Any incident is investigated and individuals found to be responsible or removed from the company. That's kind of the opposite of safety culture. Incidents are attributed to individuals rather than to any breakdown. Okay, again, that's kind of the opposite. So here the best answer is A. I feel free to tell my boss bad news. All right, question 19. In your responsive DevSecOps pipeline, which elements should best be used to create a backlog for new work? Okay, read that again. In your responsive DevSecOps pipeline, which elements should best be used to create a backlog for new work? All right, suggestions from your customer. Possibly it has some value, but let's see what else. Recommended solutions from the C-suite. Well, in reality, that's probably going to get priority, but might not be the best approach. New vulnerabilities identified by threat intelligence. Yeah, that has merit. Integration and output gaps. So this is more data-driven type decisions. I think I would go with D. Yes. Okay. Question 20. An organization in a heavily regulated industry is under tremendous pressure to bring its products to market more quickly. Software developers indicate roadblocks put in place by security management to minimize risks are negatively impacting their ability to quickly release production-ready code. Which DevSecOps principle should this organization consider first to improve its performance? Okay, invest in security education and awareness. Not a horrible answer. Let me just keep going. Automate a minimum set of security practices. Depends on the threats, maybe not. Create a shared vision and objectives. I think that's a prerequisite, definitely, because you need to know what you're trying to accomplish before you allocate resources. So C is a better answer. D, measure for desired outcomes. I'm going to go with C, but again, you might want to check the chart on this one. Yeah, C is the right answer. Create a shared vision and objectives. All right, question 21. We're now into the back half of this sample paper. An organization has a very limited budget. A team is investigating ways to improve application security testing. Which testing technique will best meet their current needs? Static application security testing. Certainly that's one of the techniques that you want to bring in early, so that's not a bad answer. Dynamic application security testing, that usually would follow SAST. Software composition analysis, I would say, should precede SAST. So I like C better. Penetration testing would be later. So I believe the best answer is C, software composition. Yeah. All right. Question 22. A development team wants to replicate full original production data to conduct a series of tests. In the context of DevSecOps engineering, what conditions must be met for this to happen? Production data should never be used for testing. I wouldn't say that. But back up the data prior to testing to mitigate risks. Okay, that's probably not a bad idea, but let's see what else. Store the data in fully production secure environment. That's a stronger answer. Mass sensitive data after it's replicated. That's also not a bad answer, but I think the more general answer is C. Store the data in fully production secure environments. Yeah. Okay, question 23. Which testing type complements an organization's continuous integration practices? So we're talking about CI. Penetration tests, usually done in CD, not CI. Vulnerability scans, usually that's done in production or close to it. Canary testing is more deployment. Static application security testing, SaaS, is generally done during CI. So I think D is the best answer. Yeah. An organization's DevOps experts have stalled due to audit concerns. Which DevSecOps practices can help alleviate audits concerns? Map changes to approve users and change records. Okay, not bad. Authenticate machine communication. Yes. Ensure all access is logged and monitored. Yes. So I think the best answer is D, all of the above. Yeah. Let's go with 25. Which factors are recommended to consider the potential impact of a threat? Which factors are recommended to consider the potential impact of a threat? So probability, intent, and capability. A is a good answer. Size doesn't have much to do with it, so B is not a good answer. D is not same reasons. C. D, confidentiality, integrity, and availability is the CIA triad, but it's, when you're looking at threats, it's more about probability, intent, and capability. So A is the best answer.